better to have some more people, but then we'll absolutely make do with what we have here. So what I'm really going to talk to you about is, I think Partha and the panel in the morning had set up a fabulous context when they spoke about the gamut of topics. And what I'm really going to do is really talk to you from the perspective or the experience of Hindustan Unilever Limited. End of the day, we are simply put, we have been the #1 FMCG company in this country for 86 years. We are all about the consumers, and therefore what I will really do is to talk to you from that lens. A couple of data points. I think today we are really about over 5 billion in terms of turnover. It's a 35,000 crore company, which is really engaged in meeting the needs of everyday needs of consumers. So the company believes in doing well by doing good. Then the next thing which I really want to talk to you about is that, look, in more than 9 out of the 10 households, our products are sold, which effectively means two things. If there's anyone here which is in the 10th household, I really urge you, buy products from Hindustan Unilever. They're fabulous. And if you are in the 9 out of the 10 households who do buy, I do encourage you to buy more, because it's really going to make a huge difference to your life. It is all about making you look good, feel good, and get more out of life. Yeah, so that's really where I want to start with when I talk to you about Hindustan Unilever. I think we really talked a lot about change. We talked about disruption, and it's not very different to what's happening to our own industry. Yeah, and if you were to really look at it, yes, in one manner we are a simple business of soap and soup, but if you actually were to see it, all the trends which are playing out are pretty much in play here, whether it's about personalization, and you see some very good snapshots in terms of some of our products, which is actually having the names of your kids, such as Baby Dove, or it's in terms of convenience. Even if you were to look at some of the trends which are playing out, companies such as Swiggy or some of the distribution and logistics companies in the China context are valued in terms of billions of dollars. So whichever way you really look at it, there's an absolute transformation which is really happening in the whole space of personalization, and it's at the center of what happens to the FMCG industry. When you look at it, obviously there's an explosion of data, and easiest way to look at it is that we are at a very nascent stage. We picked up tons of data in terms of point of sale where we sell. We pick up a lot of data from marketing, what we do. We pick up a lot of information in terms of the call centers where it comes in. So today, if you're really looking at it, it's a hugely data-rich organization. What we all find it very easy to look at it is in terms of the structured data, which is what we really control from our ERP systems and pick up, but there is more amount of data which is actually available on the unstructured side of the equation. So the whole piece will only come into being when you actually get both of them working well for us. And I think this is exactly what is happening. I think Partha and others really talked about it, how some of the nimble, agile players are actually making the leapfrog, because they don't have to go through the journey of continuous improvement, but they're actually leapfrogging. And I think as does some of the younger organizations make a change, I think the larger players need to adapt and really transform, which is also putting on a big responsibility in terms of how finance is going to reorganize itself, how finance is going to really reorient itself. We talk a lot about digital CFO, traditional CFO. To me, I think the definitions don't matter. Yeah? I think the way to really start thinking about it is that what is really a CFO and therefore a finance function expected to do, and what kind of behaviors and leadership do we really need to demonstrate. I think it's very clearly, and I think a lot is spoken about governance and world-class governance. The whole piece of stewardship and doing the right things, having the right foundation is something which is absolutely critical and non-negotiable. But if you actually then start to move in, I think that's par for the course. And if you don't do that, organizations don't exist, finance doesn't exist. Having said that, I think everything else I'm going to really talk about is really where the opportunity for finance is. You have to be the strategic leaders who really co-partner the business and run the business. And there was this very interesting conversation in the morning of saying, can CFOs be CEOs and vice versa? I think we're fortunate as Unilever. Paul Polman, who ran the business as the CEO for about 10 years, actually came from a finance background. He was a CFO for Nestle at a point in time. Yeah? If you were to really look at our own CEO, Mr. Sanjeev Mehta, is actually a CFO for many years, and he runs the business. And to me, I think it's really about some of the leadership and the behaviors and the switch that you make then starts to say how the whole equation then starts to play out. Absolutely, you have a role in terms of how do you support growth, how do you really drive agility in the organization, and it's not about finance but the broader organization. How do you actually drive value equation in terms of contribution to the bottom line, and more importantly, how do you collaborate across the functions? And I think this is where it comes down to it. In all of this, I think the fundamental change or the fundamental shift which is coming through is really how are you using technology to create value and to protect value. I think both elements then start to become absolutely critical. And I think as there's this interesting conversation going on, I said, what should CFOs be today? And I think those 3 lines for me actually summarize it very well. It's all about an and culture. It's not about that the CEO is for the growth and the CFO is for the bottom line. It is actually both are for the top line and both are for the bottom line. And therefore, when you really see it, a CFO needs to be pragmatic, at the same time being a disruptor. Yeah, you need to be open to disruptions. As Partha said, you need to be open for ambiguity. So therefore, you need to be a disruptor. When required, you need to be pragmatic. You have to be reluctant, but at the same time, you have to be risk-taking. And I was doing a bit of a math, as somebody was saying, is it IRR or I error? And Partha, I want to do this. We are a FMCG company. We spend about 13 to 14% of money on advertising. How much of that can I really say I've measured it and say I've got full juice out of that 13 and 14%? What happens? Is it possible that I will not get that last 1% right? I'm sure, notwithstanding all the sophistication we have done to advertising ROIs, I can bet you, I know that more than a couple of percentage, I really don't know what it does for me. Yeah? If I put that into context and then I say, okay, what happens if I spend about 0.5% to 1% on data and digital, right? And how much of will I get wrong? Assuming even if I get 50% wrong, is that a bad return? Yeah, so when you need to really start saying is that, look, where are you making the big investments and are you really betting the company at risk? Or are you taking some calculated risks which have got a good opportunity for return? If you start to put that into context, you can then really start to say, when are you reluctant? If you try and say, I'm going to become a Flipkart, no. But if you're really saying that I'm going to really start to experiment with data and digital, you absolutely are in the risk-taking space. And finally, it's all about connecting and galvanizing. It's very easy for us, all of us, to sit and say that, look, we will transform the finance function. It's easy to do. The question is that how are you becoming the digital champion in the organization? How are you able to get the organization excited with the possibilities of what it means? How are you bringing that into the organization? How are you making a difference? To me, when you start to play this full equation, that's when you really start to really get finance really partnering into the new age. Therefore, I think very simply put, you've got two clear responsibilities. I think we've talked about it in the morning. What are you going to do in terms of enabling the business digital transformation? Second piece is what are you really going to do from a functional standpoint? And therefore, when you really start looking at it, what should be an approach and tools? And I think it's very easy to get into very specific, whether it's RP or whether it's blockchain, but I think let's start to put some enablers into place. First, I think it's all about data strategy. It's about where are the values and how do you experiment? Then how do you scale up? And finally, how do you really make a change from an organization and a culture perspective? I think this is the one, and I think I want finance to spend a lot more time on this particular aspect. We talked about structured data, we talked about unstructured data, but the whole space on what are we collecting, how do we acquire the data, what is the ecosystem, how does it marry? If the finance function were to be actually a recipient at the end of this without having a say in this, you've lost the plot. Because how you organize and structure your data will then start to say how you're going to use the data and how you're going to really start to drive the impact from the data. So this, I think, becomes an absolute critical, and here is where I think the whole lines between whether you're a CFO, CIO, CTO will then absolutely start to merge, and everyone has to think about data. I think if you really look at in our own experience, the fundamental shift we have done is that we always said we are a marketing company, we're a consumer company, then we said we are a company about brands, and now I think we're adding one more dimension to saying that we are all about data. I think that's when you start to marry the four pieces to then say how are you making a difference to the life of consumers. And I think this is the other space. I think if you want to start looking at it from a finance and a business lens, and this is when the finance CFO starts to play into the entirety, how well do you know how you are able to touch with data and digital across the full value chain? It's very easy from a factory point of view, we all understand, more comfortable, right, going down to precision marketing, and therefore what is the value chain? Because along with this consumer journey, along with the physical supply chain comes along is really the finance journey. And I think therefore if you are having models and if you're understanding the experimentation which is going through and through, that is when as a CFO and a finance function, you start to make a big difference on the total ecosystem. Similarly, of course, you will have a plan to really have a finance journey. In many ways, it is going to say how you are partnering with the business. Don't be at the recipient, the business decides and then you change finance, partner with them. That was the previous chart. This is where are the spaces where you'll actually start to leapfrog and take it into a different dimension. And I got a very simple thing here. Many of us have an ERP system, many ERP systems or many core systems. One of the first foremost questions to ask is that how are we really juicing out this core system? What we have really is that we have dumbed down these systems by using Excel. Even if you start to go back to leveraging the power of these systems, there is a joy and juice of at least 15 to 25%. I don't know whether it is 15 or 25, but really we have really exercised it and we have really killed it. And in our own experience, as we have seen, as we spent effort in terms of looking at those core systems, how are we really moving it? The second concept I really talk about is really about intelligent automation. It's almost you need to ask yourself this question, what is your automation index? Along with that goes, what is your elimination index? How many of those activities are you eliminating? How many of them are you automating? Whether you really do an RPA, whether you then get AI, whether you get chatbots, whether you get NLPs, all combination becomes how to do it. But more importantly, what are you trying to do? What problem are you trying to solve? Or what solution are you trying to give? In our own case, we say that, look, more than 60, 65, 70% of your routine activities can completely go. I don't know whether I can go with Rashmi's view of one person with all screens, but the fact is, I think the direction is right. You don't need a lot of people really churning out data. You can really move them into insights, and then you can really move from insights to intervention. And therefore, that's the third block for us. It's all about saying, therefore, how are you using analytics? How are you really making a big difference? And we've got a whole host of tools, techniques, and projects which are really running in this space. I think this is a beautiful way. I think someone found this for us, and I found the best articulation of what you do with it. With all this data, what is the opportunity? Then you put an algo on top. The context becomes most important, because what business problem are you trying to solve, or what solution are you trying to bring? When you get the combination of the three working for us is when we really go from a value point of view. Yeah? Can we just play a quick video? And I think this is where I want to give a bit of a playing. No sound. Just give a.
We have very complex.
Just hear this out, and I'll give you a bit of a context of what happens.
We have multiple information areas to work with: the retailer panel and the consumer panel, media and equity, top line and bottom line performance. And to really make sense out of these information areas, we need to be able to link them together very well. We also need to be able to slice and dice and look for the detail in the information. And that's where Livewire comes to our rescue.
Welcome to Livewire. In every CCBT, the top question on everybody's mind is our performance market beating? Livewire empowers a CCBT to evaluate market performance. It allows drill down to brands and quickly provides insights on how individual brands and their segments in the category are performing. The CCBT then de-averages performance by geography and identifies key share gain and share loss across micro-geographies within the country. A further deep dive into individual markets helps identify market dynamics like growth rates, Unilever performance in that market, key competitor moves. Having understood the what and where of the performance, we now get into the why of the performance. This is where brand health analysis features of Livewire unlock value. All the retail, consumer panel, brand equity and media analytics data get cross-linked and presented in a manner which is visually cued, easy to comprehend and action-oriented, aiding better and faster decision-making. Getting this information geographically cross-linked across time frames would be a day's effort for each CCBT. We can do this for smaller brands on a regular basis as well. The platform also enables to track sales and execution at daily level to enable planning and focus actions on key priority areas.
So I think this is a classic example of when I start to talk about data and data lake, how you wanted to organize data and how you wanted to pick it up. And I think this is where finance led it from an organization perspective, bringing in the different data sources. And we talked about it's just not a financial data source, whether it's consumers, market shares, media, converting into a data lake, putting a very attractive top end, which is with Tableau dashboarding. So today, classically, what it does for us in a meetings is that finance is no longer the information provider. This database is absolutely available to people with all drill down capabilities, right questions to ask, visualization. Therefore, now you have really converted by democratizing data. You're now really, finance is focused on what business opportunity are you trying to leverage, where is it you're really trying to drive growth, where is it you're really trying to drive margins. And anyone else for routine administrative information cuts and dimensions, they do it. And once we've started this as a platform, this is completely wired into the organization. We're on a year 3 of our journey, and where now we have really taken into the next level of sophistication. Yeah? And I think this is another example which is coming now, building on top of this data. Now we have started to do sophisticated algorithms by using Bayesian theory and others. And this is where we got an example of something called Project Jarvis, where we have taken all of this into super sophistication in terms of how do you price a product. In our business, you will know that we sell a lot of small packs, different brands. Today, we are able to price our products very differently, even in as much as 500, 700 kilometers. Very, very relevant when it comes to categories such as home care, which is laundry or tea. Therefore, we brought in super sophistication into pricing, all on the basis of a very strong database. That then starts to believe how you then start to move up the value chain to take it into a different space. So if I now pick the fourth pillar, which was really about how are you therefore leveraging the organization, and I think this really comes down to saying is that, okay, how do you therefore give the bandwidth in the finance organization to do things differently? So the way we have really said is that, look, there are expertise functions, get them to really be the best M&A guys, best treasury guys, and get data in their own space. There is a part of the organization which is all about value addition, business partnering, who focused on driving top line, bottom line, understands category, consumers, and the works. Clearly, there is a part of the team which we have carved out what we call as finance excellence teams. And these teams are really our champions in terms of everything that we really want to do with data, analytics, information, performance management. And therefore, this is the organization which is really driving and wiring up the organization. So visualize this way. This is the engine room, this is the powerhouse, which then starts to help expertise, which then starts to help business partners, which then starts to help controlling, and they are able to actually therefore take and make the business impact. But the way for it to work, it has to be an integrated organization where you combine the efficiencies and the effectiveness, and that's how we are really taking it forward. That's really a structure. But I think more importantly, how do you make a big step change to the culture? It's very easy to stand up and say we want everyone to really start doing it. And I think this is where we have taken the example of a digi culture. There is one across the organization which the CEO leads with different functions, different work levels. And we have a similar setup which runs for finance, where I have people irrespective of work level from different functions. They all work together, they run the funnel, they come up with the ideas, we have governance, and this is how we are really taking digital right into the organization. And I think this is where we will also go into the future. There is not too far into the point, we've already started to say how much of a finance function is really about finance, how much is really about people with tech, data, mathematics, statistical background. And that's a journey that we will continue to be on as it progresses. Obviously, with driving this, it's all about entrepreneurial mindset, experimentation, and collaboration then start to become the key. So in sum and substance, if you really look at it, we are on a complete transformative journey as a finance function which is really focused on saying how are we really partnering the business, how are we driving the digital in the organization, and how are therefore we transforming finance. Yeah, so this I thought I'll give you a very quick tour in terms of our journey as Hindustan Unilever. Very happy to answer a question or two if you have on our own experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Srinivas there. And I think we don't have really time for any question to squeeze in.
That works for me.
But can we just take one very quickly? All right, ma'am, I'll come to you.
Yeah, thanks for this. Very informative. Just wanted to understand how do you handle the softer aspect of transformation in terms of how do you energize people and assure them that this is not something which is threatening to them?
So I think the way we'll always has to start with Rashmi in our experience has been a growth story. Yeah, we are a business which we are all about a growth business, and to be honest, at any point in time, you're only short of the resources that you're really wanting to build into the future. So when you first start with a growth narrative, it's very simple to saying that, look, everything that we do is not about taking roles out. It's about reshaping, rechanging, because we will require more people. Very simple. Today we are looking at from a finance point of view. In some of my build to cash center, by the time we are done with the project, I will have at least 50% less people than what I have today. But equally, I am saying I'm not a 35,000 crore HUL. We are fortunate to be in a space we are going to be a 50,000 crore HUL. However, the difference will be the data set and the skills and the competencies have to be different. So what we are really doing is that there is a very robust program in terms of future skill sets, what we want to do, 100% of our finance function, every work level today has been mapped out with a development plan. What could that really mean in terms of future? So that's how we are really managing the change. But the best way to take it is it has to be an energizing piece of where you will go. And I think that's how we're really picking it up. Yeah?
Thank you very much, Srinivas. I could see the audience being glued to your session all ears. So thank you very